Good morning, folks. I sat here looking at the screen, thinking about how I would approach today's episode, and I've been under the weather the last couple of days, snapping out of it now. So I apologize for not having an episode up. Um, Fun little space, right? You can see the hobby's just a big show. Half of me wanted to come out here and just kind of tear some stuff down, uh, and talk about the show that's put on in the hobby, the show that's put on by people, the show that's put on by breakers, by you name it. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not. Instead, I'm going to talk about a big show that I went to this past week and some of the good things that happened at that show, some of the fun things. And maybe we'll have a 15-minute episode that maybe reminds you of the reason that you're here. Because I know a lot of the folks who watch me and listen to me are folks who have spent more time in the hobby than most. Where COVID returnee is, but people who were here in the 80s, 90s, you name it, folks who have been here the entire time, folks who are in it for a little more than a quick flip. The show for me, the Philly show that I'm talking about that I went to this weekend, it reinforced a lot of good hobby things for me. And it was so busy. I was there the entire day on Saturday with my son that I forgot to pick up and hold and take a picture with the Honus Wagner that Mile High has. That's a regret, man. I've been to a bunch of nationals. I saw the SGC Mantle 52, the SGC 95 52 tops Mantle. I've seen a bunch of those. I've seen Wagners. I've never actually held a Wagner, and I know that Mile High was letting people because it was in like a heck of a case. I know they were kind of, they were promoting it, which, man, I mean, what an opportunity missed. I'll have to make sure the next time I get a chance to do that, because it's one of those things, for a hobbyist like myself, it's one of those things you just, you need to do. It's like the climbing of Mount Everest, or finishing a 2-liter bottle of soda in a half an hour. The things that we all want to accomplish. So anyway, the show itself, Philly show, couple things. Number one, really crowded. So my son and I drove 2.5 hours there, 2.5 hours back. We got there for open at 9 in the morning. Stayed there until it ended at 6 and rolled into the trade night. And basically spent an entire day there, and man, it was a lot of fun. And just some quick stories, right? Some quick stories just to kind of, I guess get the hobby juices flowing in you again, as they did it in me. Ian brought a bunch of cards. We prepped the night before, and I told him, I said, listen, you're going to be better off with your deals if you prep, if you comp your cards, if you know what you're doing. And just a quick one, before we even get to the show, my son's 11, he's going to be 12. He's been doing this for a while, so he knows his way around. But let me tell you, just really, really quick, the tools that are available to help you kind of figure out what you have, comp your cards, they've grown immensely. I can tell you a couple of them now, but it's funny because one of the many episodes that Andrew and I did years ago was talking about the bar to entry of the space, and how, if this is a hobby that, you were not in and you're trying to get into, there's sort of like a learning curve it's really hard to get over that hurdle, because there's a lot of things you have to know, and even if you have a stack of cards, like what do you do with them? People are afraid to take them to a store because they're afraid they're going to get had, right? Oh, how much are they worth? You've all seen it. Somebody says, oh, they're really only worth this. Now it's pretty easy, man. I mean, my son goes on eBay, he clicks the little camera link, which if you haven't done that yet on the eBay app, you just, in the search bar, you hit a camera and it takes a picture of your card, and it pulls up comparable sales of that card. You got to use your brain a little bit. Some other parallels and you name it come up, but PSA has that kind of stuff going on. 130 Point has great sales stuff. And I mean, it took him about an hour and a half. And in his little notes app on his phone, he had every card listed out with the comp on it, and then next to it, what he would be willing to take on those cards. Some of the more liquid stuff, kabooms, you name it, he wanted to sell for a little bit more. And some of the other non-liquid stuff, he would sell for a little bit less. So that's an interesting little aside before we get to the show. Second piece, he's walking around And while he is not shy, anybody who's done, deals with him knows he's not shy. I give him space. Like I don't want, people to see that I'm, looking over his shoulder and stuff. I want him to be able to feel like he's doing this independently. And his goal at every show is to move some of the cards from his collection that he doesn't necessarily want to keep. I don't know what the hell he wants to keep. He's a youngster. He's all about that flip life and open wax, but he wants to sell cards and he wants to use some of the money that that he gets to try to open more stuff. Lucky for him, the advent calendars from Walmart, Panini were good to him, and he had a couple of kabooms to move and some other cards, and but I noticed in the beginning it's overwhelming, right? You don't know what card store, what card table to stop at, right? You don't know where to go. And of course, we come in with different things. I walk in a show and I'm like, wait a sec, let me go take a look. Let me look, these are cool, and he's just, he's looking for more of a modern table. He doesn't want to stop at the old crusty tables like me. One, people have signs up buying. I mean, they make it real clear, smart. Some tables just a huge 6-foot banner that just says buying across the top of their table. So you don't have to, worry. Oh, hey, are you buying? They're buying. They'll let you know it's buying. But I noticed, he spent a little bit of time kind of looking around and, checking out the tables. I think he wants to see whether or not, a table has cards similar to what he has. Or, he even mentioned me, I said to him, hey, how come you didn't stop at that one? He's like, oh, that would look like it's mostly baseball. I don't really have that much baseball. And then finally, got to a table and he was about to leave the table. And the guy says to him, he goes, hey, kid, because, Ian was wearing a Cooper DeJean jersey because he was going to meet him later in the day. He says, hey, kid, you want some confetti? See that right there? We want some confetti from the Eagles. So here's this little, I don't know, his backdrop. So there you go, a little plastic bag of confetti. Now, I don't know if this is from the parade, if it's from the Super Bowl itself. I have no idea. But it's a little bag of confetti. And he hands it to my son. And my son gives it to me. And he says, all right, I'm going to ask this guy. That was his first deal of the day. Took him a couple minutes. He put his cards on the table. And the funny thing is that he had probably 20, 25 cards total with him. There were 5 that we said the night before, these will be the first 5 that go. These are going to be the ones that everybody wants. These are going to be the cards. It was like, a JJ McCarthy, Intergalactic, SSP. There was 2 kabooms. I think he had a Derrick Henry and a Travis Kelce. And, he had a couple of these like real liquid, like the cards that repackers are going to want. You know what I mean? Cards that that if you buy them at 80%, someone at the show is going to pay you 95%. Like they're like quick money, right? Anyone at the show had an opportunity on those, clear profit on those cards. Wouldn't you know it, the first 5-card deal was exactly those 5 cards we knew at that guy's table because he did this little confetti thing. And those are the 5 cards he wanted. And to his credit, Ian gave him a price at like, 85% or something like that. And the guy's like, it's a little cheap. I'll give you $20 more. And actually paid Ian more than what he was looking for on the cards by a smidge. Honest guy. I posted about him on my story, and he's included in the little video I made with Ian. And we moved on to the next table and the next table and the next table. And within an hour, Ian was done selling his cards. He had no cards left. Sold every card he came with, which is awesome. Just think about that for a second, about the liquidity in the room and the liquidity in the market, the ability to move cards. Some of those cards were not, the most liquid cards either. And they moved, and I'm sure that some of those dealers who bought the cards from him probably moved those cards again during the show. Fun to see that. But more importantly, I guess the lesson for anybody out there who's a dealer on this stuff, right? Interact with your folks. I've talked about this, for a long time. There are a lot of dealers who just sit back and, hey, if somebody wants to buy my cards, they'll come up and they'll buy my card. I can guarantee you that dealer has probably moved all 5 of those cards, or probably moved all 5 of those cards in the next like 2 hours. And if they haven't, they're definitely gone now, because any repacker would want all of the cards that were moved for more money than what he charged. So he was able to make money on those, guaranteed, from what Ian sold them to him for. And his little confetti, his little icebreaker there, his little let me, let me let the guard down a little bit. Let me let this, this kid know who's walking around with a box of cards that, I'm approachable. I'm a table that's looking to have a conversation, show me your cards. That got him pick of the litter. That got him first shot at all the cards that Ian brought, and the first 5 moved like we knew they would. Just an interesting little fun story that I'll throw out there, right? Because not everybody does that, and everybody should. So that's that. Another fun one. Ian took his money and then bought a bunch of shit. So there's another fun one, right? He bought a bunch of boxes. He sold his kabooms and then bought more boxes kaboom hunting, and spent all this money buying cards, trying to get kabooms again, and just completely crapped out. Went home with like nothing. Sold a bunch, bought a bunch. Lucky for me, did not buy anywhere near what he sold, but gave a lot back. It's sort of like that casino, right? You hit and you give some back, hoping you hit again, and it did not work out for him that way. But here's one of the things that I did. I said to him, I said, listen, we're going to buy a box. We're going to buy whatever boxes you want. We're going to buy a box that I'm going to have fun opening. And we purchased a box after we opened his stuff. Walk around towards the end of the show. We purchased a box of 1992-93 Series 2 Topps basketball. 36 packs, $195. Think about that, right? It's like $5 a pack. Gold card in every pack. And it was a rookie box. A lot of rookie golds. About half were rookie golds. I got a Larry Johnson gold. But what was fun was by the middle of the box, and by the way, Ian and myself opened it up with Leighton Sheldon, the vintage breaks guy, and his son as well. So that was a nice little fun kind of moment there. I bought the box. Now you have a 10 and 11-year-old kid opening up a box of cards from when I was a kid. I think I was 15 years old when that box came out. And I remember opening it, hoping to pull a Shaq Gold card. And we were trying to pull a Shaq Gold card. But what was better was, when you get to the middle of the pack where the gold is, it could be 2 cards. The cards are like upside down. And it's like, you see the back, Latrell Sprewell. And my son's like, it could be Latrell Sprewell. Oh, man, it's not. It could be, oh. And we talk about like Christian Laettner. So anyway, we got a Harold Miner gold, which was awesome. I would have loved that back then. He never really panned out, Baby Jordan. Oliver Miller gold, but a bunch of like first-round draft pick golds, a couple of Shaq base cards. I will be grading them. They were in great shape. Cards weren't really bricked. There's not much foil except for the gold cards, so they don't really brick those Topps cards. And what's funny about it is, that if a Shaq grades a 10, it gets you back more than half your box price. Meanwhile, all the stuff that we bought with him trying to kaboom chase, literally all in the garbage. Like, I don't think we kept any cards at all. Even your base Jaden Daniels doesn't even get you $1. You know what I mean? Maybe it gets you $1. So it was a funny little thing, and I think he would tell you he had a lot of fun with that. And it's an eye opener, right? Because these new boxes, $400, $500, $600, it's insane. I had him open with me a 95 Contenders football box. And opened it up with Army, ATC, and Mac. They were in the back when I opened up the box. And it's funny because I remember opening those boxes, when I was a teenager. And with my brother, we were looking for Hog Heaven inserts. There wasn't one in this box, but there was a back-to-back insert. And I didn't get it. Army opened it up. And he looks at it. It's the only card in the box that has a foil on it. And he sees it's Bruce Smith, gold foil on the top and silver foil on the bottom. He's like, oh, Bruce Smith, this is awesome. I go, you know what, though? If you flip that over, you can see Reggie White. And he flips it over and there's Reggie White on the back. And he's like, how did you know this? I'm like, I opened a lot of this stuff. It's funny because it made me think about how breakers kind of know what's coming now, right? But, I haven't opened a box of that since the 90s. But I still remember opening so many of them and putting that set together when I was a kid that I remembered who was on the back of the card. It's pretty funny. My box was $40. $40. I loved it. I had a blast. I had a blast opening cards with folks. And then the show itself. Let me get into it, right? Because I don't know if you could tell, the excitement that I have about this, right? The excitement that I have. But the show itself, before I get into it, I'm wearing a hat here, right? It's obviously on purpose if you haven't seen it. This is a collectible hat. this hobby is an interesting space, man. There are things that are going to come and go, and there are things that are going to stay. That Philly show has been around for a long time, and it will be here for a long time going forward. And the reason for it is because they do things the right way. The reason for it is because, well, lucky for them, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, right? So they were able to get a huge crowd in, um, and bring in Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP, and have the whole team basically signing autographs and stuff. So that helps. But even when it's not that, they have autograph signers, they have vintage, they have this great mix of Pokemon and vintage and modern cards, and it's a big show, but it's not too big where you can't navigate the show. And it's really just done the right way. And it is a reminder that there are things in this hobby that have been here and will be here, a hobby stalwart. And we kind of get lost in the whole, this breaker's dressed up like this football player, or this breaker's dressed up like a wrestler, and they got makeup on and they're making stupid cringy videos to sell their products. That's a new thing. And maybe it stays for a little while because maybe that's the audience that they're trying to, attract. Maybe that's the kids these days. Maybe that appeals to, the younger folks. And maybe there's a sports betting aspect to it that's come in recently. I don't know if that stays. And honestly, I don't really care. Because the part that I like is what I saw on Saturday at that show, a whole bunch of everything. You're meeting your people. You get to hang out with hobby folks. You get to see hobby friends who you otherwise just interact with on Instagram or on social. You get the cards, you get the buys, the sells, you get the excitement of it. You get people talking about cards. You get conversations about, like, what do you think the next big thing is going to be? What do you think about this? Are you going to be at the National? What are the next shows you're going to? Where are you going? What are you doing? It's a lot of fun. But the show itself, I can't believe it took me 16, 17 minutes to get here, but a huge thank you to the guys who run that show. They run the Chantilly show, and lucky for everybody, they run the National now. And I think you're going to see that in the National coming up. You're going to see, a real combination of the new and the old, right? There'll be those corporate centers, there'll be the corporate booths, there'll be that corporate area, there'll be that, focus and attention on, what Fanatics and Panini and the auction houses and the businesses are doing. But there's also a real nod to the people who are here before any of those guys, the people who have been doing this for a long time, the cards that have been around forever. And if you could do that right, if you can mix the old and the new, this hobby really is like nothing else. And the Philly show does that really well. And I'm sure they're going to bring a lot of that to the National. But just a couple quick things, because you don't really see it, right? The moving parts that go into a show like this, it is amazing and awesome to see. And you got to give a lot of credit to the folks who are running it, right? A big nod to Joe. You know who you are. Likes to stay behind the scenes, and that's fine. But a big nod to Joe. Man, talk about having to bob and weave, dodge the punches, deal with it as it happens. Because you're dealing with athletes and agents and time shifts. And, if this guy's supposed to sign at this time, but he comes in a couple hours early and says he's going to leave, now you got people who are coming in thinking that he's signing at this time. And, you're going to have to deal with them and figure out a way to have to deal with those guys. And, if one guy's there too long and doesn't finish signing, and it's just, the athlete portion of it, somebody passes out on the floor and, you got police and ambulance, and you got to have, that emergency vehicles come in. There's police escorts for some of these athletes that you got to deal with. You're dealing with the show itself and all the vendors and all their issues. Heavy winds cause a power outage for a few seconds during the show across the whole, not just that location, but across the whole area. And, you have to deal with that. Security issues. And then, you got to deal with the prima donnas like me, who come in and bring their son and are hoping for a good show and, are going to do an episode and, say, hey, this show, you got to make sure I'm happy. I'm just kidding. There's no way I wasn't going to be happy. But it is amazing to watch these operators because, every once in a while, it's like you go to a restaurant, you sit down, and you have the steak, and yeah, this is okay. Yeah, it's amazing what goes into getting that steak on your plate. Now multiply that by 3,000 for a show like this with all the vendors, taking care of the space. Think of the planning that goes into it ahead of time. And then just the days of just the amount of moving pieces, the amount of moving parts, and more importantly, the amount of people that you have to keep happy. From the people who are buying tickets to go to the show, to the vendors at the tables, to the people who are buying tickets for photo ops, people who are buying tickets for the autographs, then combined with all of the talent, the athletes, the businesses, the agents, the mail-in autographs, it is just, it's a monumental task. It's something that, you perfect over time. It's something that, lucky for us, there are folks in this, in this hobby, in this business, in this industry who've been doing this for as long as they have, and they know how to do this, how to roll with the punches. And to give Joe some more credit, one of the most even-keeled people I've ever met in my life. And you have to be. You can't get too high. You can't get too low. It's a job I couldn't do because I would just be throwing punches. By like 10:30 in the morning with as many things went wrong, I'd be like, that's it. That's it. The next person who comes to me with a problem, I'm going to just punch him in the face. And, never once. Never once. So, I mean, a big nod because what a blast I had at the show. And I'm able to have a blast. My son's able to have a blast. The thousands and thousands of people who come through that show are able to have a blast because of all the things that are going on behind the scenes that you won't even know about. And the reason you don't know about them is because there's somebody back there handling it and making sure you don't know about it, making sure that it runs smoothly. So a nice nod to, those folks. And guys, I didn't get $1 for saying this. And you should know that. I'm saying this because it's true. I'm saying this because there are good parts of this hobby. There are good parts of what we do. That show is one of them. And if you ever have a chance to go there, it's worth the 2.5-hour drive each way from me. Take a look at that show. And I mean, if you're at the National this year, you'll probably see some added touches because that's just what those folks bring. So we've touched on the Philly show. We've touched on, nostalgia. We've touched on a bunch of stuff. And I try to keep these things to like 20 minutes or so. I'm trying to set up a time with Valor to do our third episode with him as well. And I think that was, all I wanted to touch on here today. I powered through this one here. I'm not 100% on the health tick, but we're getting there. Guys, I come back from a show like that reinvigorated about the hobby. I really do. I wanted to do an episode Monday morning, but just wasn't up to it. It took me a little while to get in front of the camera, find some time and just talk about it. I hope you can tell my excitement sort of, through the episode, if you're listening or watching. I'm excited about the hobby. I'm excited about some of the conversations that I had. At the time, the market hadn't really crashed as much as it's crashed the last couple of days, and I'm wondering how that may impact sort of the money that's out there, and the cards in the space. But yeah, that's my take. I'm gonna do another one of these. I'll try to come on either tomorrow or Friday, and I'll try to see if I can get something in the books with Valor and do that as well, a live episode. But I just wanted to come on and kind of share with you guys because sometimes you're in the doldrums, right? The hobby it doesn't do it for you. And I famously say all the time that the hobby is not what it is on Instagram. And I fall victim to it myself. I get into kind of Instagram little spats with people as well. And there's no reason for that. And you see them in person and it's like, wow, everything's great. You know what I mean? Oh, and let me also throw a little 1-minute thing here. It's free. Wax Stars, Merino, Bagels and Wax. They have the trade night afterwards. I mean, I helped them bring them in. They 20 pizzas, like just stacks. Everybody's carrying pizzas in for folks, right? Where it's just a kids trade night. They got folks there doing hobby giveaways, asking questions. Who's the first person to come to me with a card that's serial number 12? And somebody runs up and they give them a box of cards, just giving out freebies, you name it. It's another cool thing that goes on at a show like this for the kids specifically. That was fun. Ian won a box and I'm like, you got to give that to somebody else. And he did, he kind of like, here you go, somebody else's box. But I would have felt, like I missed something there, but we rolled into that trade night afterwards and what fun. I mean, a packed room where just, people are making trades, making more deals. It allows the show to kind of extend beyond the show, and it's right there in the same building. So that was a cool thing to experience as well. Could have driven home earlier, but Ian wanted to stay and hang out and go to a trade night. It was an interesting thing to watch because he had no cards left to trade because he had sold them all. But that's not stopping him. I think he was trying to work out deals with people to move their cards for them and take a cut. Always moving, always shaking. A fun little trade night to cap that off. And guys, listen. I guess the upshot of this episode is it doesn't have to be the Philly show. It could be any show. Head out to one. Spend an hour in a show. Open some wax. Maybe try to find a box that brings you back. I'll be honest. I went on eBay and I am looking at boxes like the ones that I opened. Those boxes that bring me back to when I was a kid and had fun opening boxes. And they are cheap. 94 football, 93 football, 94 is Marshall Faulk rookie years with Bledsoe's second. Some cool, fun inserts starting to come, some foil inserts and stuff. I'm sure they'll be bricked, but that's not the point. It brings you back to what you were opening back then, 92, 93 basketball, like that Topps box. They're not expensive. They're a fun rip, and they kind of just, reinvigorate you in the hobby and stuff. So it gets you back to what this is about and why you're here and why you continue to spend time here. It's not all about buying and selling. And it's not all about chasing the most expensive cards and PMGs and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's it, man. This is the longest episode I've done in a while. It's because I'm excited. It's because I had a really good time at the Philly show. My son had a really good time at the Philly show, and that means a lot. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. This episode, not brought to you by Collectible, not brought to you by Show Enough from The Last Dragon. Am I the meanest? Show Enough. Am I the prettiest? Show Enough. Am I the baddest, most low down around this town? Show Enough. Shogun of Harlem. No, it's brought to you by Bleecker Trading and Arena Club. Check out the Arena Club slab packs. Lots of hits, lots of grails getting hit, whether you're on the Jim Rome show or not. See you later, guys.